Prometheus, playing October 5th through 7th at Theater Off Jackson.
And I am Fosse Jack, the other half of the artistic director team and other half of the adaptation team for a Metamodern Prometheus.
My first introduction to the Frankenstein story is probably a little later than most people. I think that even though I certainly had like cultural awareness of this story, right, the idea of a reanimated corpse certainly shows up in pop culture a lot. I think like I want to go with my first real encounter with the book. I'm a book gal, as evidenced by this dress. And the first time that I was given the opportunity to read the book was in a college course I took at UCSB in undergrad called Making Up Monsters. So if you're going to teach a class that is about how we make cultural monsters, I think you got to start with this one. And indeed we did. So we started with this novel that went on to invent the idea of science fiction and has played a long-lasting legacy in horror.
So one of the things I think is unique about this particular show compared to other ones that we have produced as a company is that we've taken a novel that is about a generative act, about a creation story, and then we've taken the actual creation story of that creation story and adapted it. So in this particular case, what we're actually adapting is Mary Shelley's foreword to the 1832 publication of Frankenstein, and telling that particular story, that story of Mary Shelley and her husband Percy and Lord Byron and the others in that circle who met in Geneva, Switzerland during a wet, ungenial summer and got bored and started writing ghost stories. And so that's the story that we're telling. In this particular show, I started with that text, with that foreword, and then started to flesh it out using pieces of other writings of the author. This is a story about an author who was surrounded by authors. So in this particular case, it was finding the words that sort of showed each person. We wanted to show the emotional sort of lift of Percy Shelley and the inspiration that he brought into Mary's life and vice versa. We wanted to show the sort of the rawness of some of Lord Byron's poetry. We wanted to look at other horror tales of the time and bring in John Polidori's The Vampire. So what we were doing here is looking at a bunch of different texts, all from the same era of time, and all from the same genre birthing summer to create this story. And every story is told in different ways. Every approach to adaptation is different. In this one, my goal when I initially adapted this was to show those friendships and to show how they inspired and worked with each other. That was back for the original adaptation in 2018. For this particular approach, growing that original script, adding more of the novel, which is told almost entirely in dance, or entirely in dance, by choreography by Trixie Paprika, and more stories that were told, brought in by Sailor, who decided to take what I built and grow it.
Yeah, it's a really, I think what you were describing earlier, it's like in the way that this is both a text and a meta text, it's also this act where we've sewn things together from a variety of different textual sources in the original draft, and then even more so with this one, to add on more pieces from the novel, using pieces from the novel to show resonances between the novel and Shelley's life, and then additionally adding some further framework from some of her letters and diaries. So there's a whole bunch of different textual influences here. So it is very Frankenstein in its own way.
Yeah.
Yeah, this approach to adapting Frankenstein, I think, differs from a lot of other adaptations because in one, we are fusing the story of how Frankenstein was created with the novel itself, which is a fairly unique approach, at least in film, I will say. They don't really do that so much in film, but I have definitely seen some other theater projects that have followed that sort of inspiration track. But also, I think that this is an adaptation of Frankenstein that understands the humanity at the core of the creature for obviously a really long time, especially coming out of the James Whale Universal Monsters era, understanding of Frankenstein that's colored so much of the 20th century. We see the creature as a site of horror, and I think we've come to a different kind of cultural understanding now where the creature is not actually the thing that is the most horrifying part of the novel, but how the creature is responded to and mistreated by so many others. I really like to think about Frankenstein often as a novel about justice, and I think that that's not a theme that we really touched on here, but it is about what our responsibility is as creators. And that's really the through line that we are taking. And so I think that comes through in the story we're telling about Mary Shelley as she is generating this idea, how it relates to her life as a young mother, as someone who has suffered a lot of grief and loss in only a really short period of time. And then thinking about Victor's responsibility too, right? Or lack of responsibility. So there's a lot, I think, about parentage here. And while this doesn't lean fully into thinking about the full feminist repercussions of that or readings of that, I think that it does start to generate those conversations. And it's just, it's not what Kenneth Branagh is doing in this version.
You can go to our website, www.novelteasetheater.org, and look up tickets, our little ticket link that'll take you right there to our sub-site for that. And the show is coming up on October 5th, 6th, and 7th at Theater Off Jackson in the International District.